We're here on a warm July day at Chip's Park at our shop to talk to you about one of the most important parts of landscaping and gardening, and that's watering. If you want to learn more about summer gardening tips, subscribe to our channel. I'm John Valentino with Chip, and over the course of about 42 hot summers, we've become experts in irrigation and how to maximize techniques of watering. That's what we're going to talk about in this video. And in response to Mr. Feng's comment where we've encouraged Chip to speak up. Oh, there he is. He's ready to talk. So one of the real keys to watering and irrigation in the summer is not to overdo it. If I had the choice of whether to overwater or underwater, I'd rather slightly underwater. Overwatering, especially when you have high temperatures, creates all kinds of problems. The first step is to make sure that you need to water, and you do that in a couple of different ways are possible, but that's to get involved in some way with your garden. Either use your hands and dig in there and feel it and try to have an ongoing knowledge of where it's wet and how wet it is and where it's dry and how dry it is, and have a sense of whether it needs to be watered or not. Another tool that you can use is a soil probe, which I use a lot, and it works very effectively at giving you an idea of the soil moisture. You never want it to be soaking wet or saturated wet. You always want it to be pleasantly moist. So a soil probe or your hand is an important part of the first step. Let's make sure it really needs to be watered, and then let's try to come up with a watering schedule that doesn't overwater, but also keeps it moist most of the time, but waters minimally in order to accomplish that. So we want to water as little as we possibly can to keep everything looking good. That's a real key to effective watering. So one of the most beneficial things if you're trying to maximize water and save water and efficiently apply water is to consider a water efficient garden. Some people call it a xeriscape, but it's a whole design of an irrigation system and plants structured to save water. At this garden, we feature lots of interesting plants that don't need a lot of water, such as the Palo Verde tree cultivar desert museum in both a standard form and a multi-trunk form. Muhlenbergia regal mist, which is spectacular in the fall with a really colorful seed pod. Salvia Santa Barbara, which is an interesting dwarf salvia that blooms like crazy the whole time it's warm. Dianella. In this case, we use a variety called Casa Blue. Then we have Carapia, can be used as a lawn substitute or a ground cover. If you want to learn more about Carapia, check out this video that we did in a prior week. And Agave Blue Glow. So all of those are very water efficient plants. So we're starting with this premise of plants that even in hot weather, we're not going to need to water very often. Then we water it in the most efficient way possible. And you can see here at this garden where we're delivering water only right at the root balls of each individual plant. So we're not throwing water everywhere or distributing water everywhere like a lot of gardens do. So that's a very efficient use of water where we're only delivering it where the plant is. So in this case, at this water efficient garden, we're using a drip system and doing it in a way that represents the appropriate amount of water for each plant. So we separated trees from shrubs and that type of thing. Then in between the plants, we mulched either with decomposed granite, which has a little color to it for interest. In this case, it's a California gold one. Some places there's cobble for visual interest, and then some places there's mulch. All of those protect the soil, conserve moisture. All of those add up to a water efficient garden that we can minimize water use on. Almost all advice you'll hear is water infrequently and water deeply. And that's kind of pretty good advice, but I think there's lots of circumstances, or several circumstances, where that's not accurate. First of all, if it's a brand new landscape, and especially if it's a brand new landscape during hot season, then you're not going to want to emphasize deep watering, because there will be no deep roots. Everything will be right on the surface. These will be plants that you just installed, and so your challenge is to keep these new root balls moist. So actually you're going to do shallow watering, and frequent shallow watering, but not for long periods of time, because as I've said, nothing is more lethal for plants than too much water and hot temperatures. So if we have these hot temperatures in the summer and we've just installed plants, we want to figure out a way to just keep those root balls moist on the surface and allow them to root out. Over time, we'll transition to a deeper style of watering, but in the beginning we'll have shallow watering. Another situation where I think deep watering is inappropriate is in the course of trying to help you with lawns that don't look good or landscapes that don't look good. I get a lot of photos of your gardens, and sometimes you'll send me a photo of a lawn that looks terrible and has lots of dead areas or barely surviving areas. And I know those areas don't have deep roots. So as we attempt to enliven the soil and rebuild this through healthy soil, we're not going to stress deep watering because there's nothing down there. What we need to do is apply all of these nutrients that we have to activate on a surface level and feed and water fairly shallow roots, because that's all we've got. I can tell by looking at the photos that that's all we have at the time. The other factor that influences how deeply you water is the soil type. So if it's a very heavy soil, then we know we do want to do infrequent deep watering. If it's a light soil, then we're not going to do as deep a watering, because that water we know is just flushing right through. So we want to keep the top moist. So we'll probably have to do more frequent waterings, but depending on how deep our roots are, maybe we don't let it run as long. So we have some recognition of whether we have sandy soil or heavy soil is going to factor into this infrequent deep watering, or more frequent, less deep watering, because of the type of soil. Frequency of your watering is also variable. For instance, I have a park strip at my house that has nothing but trees in it and a small gravel. And so in those trees, they're deeply rooted. I don't need to water very often. I set the controller to water that like every 3 or 4 weeks, and I do water very deeply and very infrequently. If you have things that are more shallow rooted or lawn, then obviously you're going to water more often. So the frequency is very much dependent on the plants you're watering and your soil, and so those are considerations. And also the level of health. If it's sick and you know you don't have a lot of deep roots, you're going to want to water more often. And if you have very light soil, you're going to water more often. So the plant type of soil all go into this frequency. All those need to be considered, and I would not necessarily go to this idea that always infrequent and deep is the best. So the summer watering is generally involves a lot of common sense and not that problematic. The exception being in lawn, where it really almost needs to be perfect as we get these high temperatures like we get in our area, over 100 degrees. Your lawn watering system needs to be really, really top-notch, and it's hard for it to be top-notch unless you or someone involved in the care of your lawn is very engaged in that system. It needs to be working perfectly in order to keep a green lawn when the temperatures get over 100 degrees. And working perfectly on a lawn means you have head-to-head coverage or even better than head-to-head coverage. So when you envision a sprinkler system working on a lawn, you probably, as a novice, you would think, well, if our spray patterns just overlap, one sprinkler sprays to the next spray, you know, that's enough coverage. But that's 100% wrong. You need to have head-to-head coverage. That means the spray or the pattern of one sprinkler has to actually go to the other head, not just to the spray of the other head. So that's called complete double coverage, and that's important in the design. So this head-to-head coverage requires that you have really good pressure at every head, and that the spray of one head sprays all the way to the next head. Also, you know, it's best if you don't have a lot of overspray, so you're not spraying houses, you're not spraying driveways, you're not spraying fences, you're just focused on spraying the lawn. You don't have a lot of leaks, so the heads are in top working condition, and that you separate the valves so that full sun gets separate valve from lots of shade, so that you can water each zone the right amount. And those are the fundamental parts of a properly operating irrigation system: is head-to-head coverage, proper pressure to each head, no leaks, minimum of overspray, and installed in a way where the heads don't break every time you mow the lawn, but so they're slightly finished at the right grade, possibly on swing joints, so that when it comes on, it pops up over the lawn, and when it goes off, it goes below the grade so that gardeners aren't breaking heads. These are all parts of a good irrigation system in a turf area. If you have watering tips or watering challenges, let us know in the comments below. So the way to make irrigation less fussy, to where you don't have to worry about it so much being perfect, is with healthy soil. The way to do that is to infuse it with life. Check out our products on our website. That's exactly what they're about, is improving everything about every type of soil, whether it's clay or whether it's sand, where you have to water too much or you have to be careful about watering too much. johnandbobs.com will help you manage problem soils, which will help you not have to be so perfect in your irrigation system. Last week's plant was Dianella Casa Blue, and the first 5 people that identified that correctly received a free bag of our blend, which is what we use on all our projects and was used on this Dianella. Our plant for this week is a really interesting one. Tough, reliable, beautiful, and not that popular, not really that well known. The first 5 of you that guess it properly is going to get an 8-ounce Penetrate Liquid Biotiller, which was used on this project. Click the link in the comments in order to submit your answer. So it's a reality that lawns that require a lot of summer water when it's hot kind of invite all kinds of garden problems. The way to minimize that is grow things that don't require a lot of water in the summer. You might want to consider a lawn substitute, which we covered in another video about Carapia, that needs about 60% the amount of water that a cool season turf needs.